The backlogs caused by a shortage of judges in Gauteng is having a disastrous effect on the performance of the courts. The high volume of cases, coupled with the strained resources, has led to waiting times of up to 5 years. To discuss this, I'm now joined by the CEO of the Personal Injury Plaintiff Lawyers Advocate Justin Erasmus. Advocate, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. How do you assess this current state of...
Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being with us. Now, how do you assess the current state of the civil justice system in Gauteng, and what factors or challenges do you believe have contributed to getting us at this point?
We are teetering on the brink of disaster in this court. You say the wait is up to 5 years. It's actually much longer. At the moment, if you apply for a trial date, so you apply for a trial date today, you'll get a date sometime in mid-2029. But that doesn't take into account the fact you've probably taken approximately 2 years to get to the point where you can apply for the trial date. So you're looking at a timeline approximately of 8 years to get your matter to court. And that is terrible. I mean, that affects people's constitutional rights to housing. It affects their rights to access to the courts. The whole gamut of constitutional rights are affected there. The reasons why, there's many reasons why. It's a multifaceted problem. At the heart of it is there's not enough judges. Quite simply, the deputy judge presidents do their best, and I commend them for what they're doing. They appoint acting judges every recess to try and get into the backlog, but it's not really a long-term solution to have pro bono, in other words, people who do it for free, acting judges. Then we need strong permanent judges in our divisions. Remember, Gauteng takes approximately 50% of all civil litigation in the country goes through these courts. So the burden on the courts is terrible. But I say it's a multifaceted problem because we need more judges, but more than that, it involves so many complex things. It involves, if you have more judges, you need, firstly, that has a financial implication, so that has got to be dealt with by the government. And that perhaps brings in a Department of Justice. But those judges need a place to sit. It's difficult for the judges. I've often sat waiting with a judge to have a courtroom to sit in. There's not courtrooms available, so we need to be sure if we appoint more judges that we're going to have courtrooms for those judges to sit in. Those judges require registrars and they require administrative assistants. Those need to be brought in. So it's justice, it's public works, it's finance, all the way through. And I think an important point to make, and I don't know if you are aware of Judge Mlambo's statements over the weekend, and he made this point, and I think it's a good one. The courts have been neglected for a long time, and for whatever reason, and that is a tragedy in our country because the courts are an important third leg of government. We have executive, we have parliament, but the court holds people to account. They've got that role in our society, and if they can't do that, besides just administering justice on a daily basis, they can't fulfill their role as the third leg of government. And I can't tell you why they've been neglected. I don't know. I can speculate, but I'm reluctant to do so. But they have been. Our courts are in a shocking condition. The lifts don't work. The judges don't have rooms to sit in. Another important point to make is perhaps the state needs to look at the remuneration of judges. Judges are remunerated very poorly. Your average legal practitioner out-earns what a judge earns, and that is wrong. You're asking people to become judges. They're going to take a step back in their career in a financial aspect anyway to become a judge. So the problem is multifaceted. It's multifactorial, and I don't know how. Really, there's no single silver bullet that I can give you here. It requires a coordinated approach by all the role players to fix. But it has to be fixed before we get disaster.
Advocate, this is a very bleak picture that you're painting here, especially when it comes to some of the infrastructure that you make mention of. Of course, you say you don't want to speculate, because what I really wanted to know is that, was there no planning that happened previously? Were we not looking to see for us to get to a point where we won't have enough judges and we won't have enough in terms of the infrastructure where they need to sit?
We in advocates and attorneys joke about it. You can count your seniority from whether you can remember when the lifts last worked in the South Gauteng High Court, because I don't remember. I've been practicing for 25 years, and I don't remember those lifts ever working properly. I mean, and that's just one small thing. Yes, we can take the stairs, but judges need computers. Judges need access to law libraries. They need researchers. And it goes, it's not just us. It's not just us in the North and South Gauteng. The worst performing court for giving judgments timelessly is the Constitutional Court, our apex court. And that is terrible. The Constitutional Court deals with, matters of life and death for our country, and they're taking a year, 2 years to do a report, and it's not because the judges are tardy. I please want to be clear on that. Our judges work extremely hard, all of our judges at all of the courts, but the human being can only do so much.
And what then would be the implications? I mean, you touched a little bit on them earlier. What implications does this perceived crisis in Gauteng particularly have for the timely resolution, the quality of adjudication, and of course the enforcement of some of those cases, and in terms of the backlogs and the cost on the people who are going through all of these cases?
Well, the cost on people is dramatic. It's obvious in a criminal case, if a criminal case is dragged out for too long, because of the implications for potentially innocent persons. So I don't think I need to say anything more about that. But, in roll call this morning, there were 71 matters on the roll. Of those, 11 were commercial matters, and the other 60 were all matters that involve personal injury of some kind or wrongful arrests, all sorts of cases where there were poor people, mostly as the plaintiff seeking justice, poor people that need compensation or some kind of justice to put themselves right. That taking 6 years is sometimes 6 years that a person who's lost their income has no income. It's sometimes 6 or 8 years a person that desperately requires medical care is not getting the level of medical care that they need. And it goes on and on. You can see when a person is perhaps hurt in a motor vehicle accident, they are rendered unemployable, they are sitting in a wheelchair, they can't get to a doctor to get what they need. So that is an untenable situation for our country. It's not, in my view, why South Africa was established. The new South Africa exists to benefit all of its citizens, and every day, that's hundreds and hundreds every week, are not getting the access that they need to the courts, and the how shall I put it, the relief they need to their situation from the courts. Not because the courts don't want to offer it, but as I say, there's just too many. You apply for a trial date today, you're going to wait 6 years until mid-29, you've already waited 2 years. Just hope your matter doesn't postpone, because then you'll wait another 10 years.
So, Advocate, what would you say are the low-hanging fruits? What would you advocate for in terms of reforms, improvements, or just interventions to address this systematic issue?
The low-hanging fruit is, I think, to appoint acting judges on a paid basis in large numbers to try and at least hold the backlog in check. You then, from that's an easy thing to do. I would suggest, you could even take those judges out of the normal court environment. They could sit in a court like the Land Claims Court, which is not very highly, it's got space. It's not as utilized as other courts. Put them there. Let them go through the backlog as quickly as what they can. Then you need to move on to the permanent establishment. You need to look at the remuneration of judges. You need to look at the number of judges. And you need to do that. That's a short to medium term solution. I should perhaps just let you know now that there is a process called the rationalization of courts, which is now in its stage 2, where hopefully some of these problems will be addressed. But that is approximately 2 to 3 years away from bearing fruit. So, what I'm saying could be dealt with as part of that process. It could also be dealt with on an interim and urgent basis pending the outcome of that process. But it's difficult to give you much more low-hanging fruit than that. This is a problem that's been building for a decade, and it's not going to be solved in 10 weeks. You know, we can mitigate it and we can try and hold it in check, but it's multifactorial and it needs to be dealt with on that basis.
And lastly, Advocate, does this pose any reputational risks or credibility on the legal fraternity as a whole?
Well, you know, the man in the street perhaps doesn't have a great view of the legal system, which is sad, because the legal system is there to serve the man in the street. That's why we become lawyers and why people become judges. But what I can say is what perhaps might mitigate that view is there are thousands of hardworking attorneys, advocates and judges that do their best to deal with their clients, to let their clients know what is happening. But no matter how hard you try to do that, you're never going to take away the distress of somebody sitting in a wheelchair with bed sores for years and years because they denied treatment because their case hasn't come to court. So that is unfortunately where we are.